perfection. So if nothing else happens during the course of this show, that happened, and we can all feel good about that.
The little things.
Rick's here. Anton is here. I don't know if we'll hear from Adam or not, but a lot of stuff kind of rushed today. Stuff got moved around a little bit, reprioritized, and we're kind of just winging it a little bit. But there's a lot of stuff to talk about, actually, so it's not that much of a stretch. Let's check out the sponsors, and then we'll start talking about all the relevant stuff we're aware of.
Well, Jazz Cabbage Cafe, sponsored by Stone Depot. They have exceptional cannabis, as does Redemption Cannabis and Real Leaf Solutions. The Detroit Nutrient Company, don't smoke their stuff. GrowGreenMI.com, don't smoke their stuff. Custom 420 promos, wear their stuff, just like Culture Clothing. You don't smoke dirt.
Mr. Hashbass jumps on.
Yo.
What's up, Adam?
Is that the autism awareness
yes.
sir? Yes, thank you.
Red Wing Autism Awareness hoodie.
Totally cool.
That's
Tyler
badass.
from Vivid Farms and Red Setter Farm.
My name on the back, my number on the back. It's badass.
How you feeling?
I feel miserable, but I got narcotics, so I'm doing okay.
Anything to ease the pain.
I went to the pain doctor at the pain clinic, and the guy literally, after looking at my shit, said, "So tell me, what do you want?" And I wasn't. You're muted, Jamie. I think.
No. I was just going to interject about how you are really a legitimate recipient.
I'm a legitimate patient.
They're so concerned about not with all the issues with.
Right. So he looked at
abuse.
He lifted my shirt to look at my back. He said, "Oh, wow." And then he wants to know, out of all these drugs, which ones do I want? And I'm like, well, I only know certain ones. I'll take the Oxy 15s if you don't mind. I could use 60 milligrams a day. Gets me through the day. And he's like, I can do that. And I said, I really appreciate that. I've been fighting this for years. I said, I looked it up before I came to see you. Last year, 109,000 people died from opiate overdose. And because of that, they're making millions of us suffer. And it's not the doctors who tell you that they can't write for it. Because if you have a DEA number, you can write for anything, for any drug out there. It's that they don't want the MAPS people looking up their ass, questioning all their scripts they're writing. So
MAPS is a Michigan automated prescription service which controls those and monitors it.
Right. And they basically created a separate set of doctors who are now pain doctors. And what they do is they open up their books to MAPS gladly. And they don't mind being looked at because they're always dealing with patients like me. In the meantime, I could spot the two junkies in the waiting room.
Yeah, anybody that's been around it can.
And there might be a balance for those people. They might now, kind of rely on it, but also now be somewhat dependent too at the same time. That's how that shit works for some.
So Adam is like Stitches and Chains. That's what he is. That's your new name, Adam. Stitches and Chains, man. It's what you have in abundance.
I feel like I got an erector set in my back. And if you're old enough to know what that is, it's kind of funny.
Well, I mean, erector set in the front is pretty normal, but erector set in the back is maybe a little different.
Dude, you don't know
this. Hey, man, if you want to choose now to start discussing some stuff you're trying out later on in life, that's cool.
You did go to prison, so I mean, whatever.
My wife is standing here listening to you say all this, Rick. So,
Rick.
We specifically named me. Oh no, another wife that's gonna hate me.
You waited until she walked into the room before you started laying it on.
She just closed the door and left. She needed some money.
Ruining my reputation with yet another female. Okay,
Get in line, right?
No offense, Rick, but you actually didn't have a chance with this one anyway. No, but my point to the doctor was, millions of people are suffering because of 109,000 people, which I know seems and sounds like a lot. The Russians just called up 300,000 people. The country's emptying.
You could fit all those
running
people
for
in
the
Michigan
border.
Stadium.
Right. People are running to the border. The reality is that they didn't pay attention to COVID until there were a couple 100,000 people dead. And then they realized, oops, we better make some changes. But this opiate thing is very interesting. And it's because it's happening to white people. Because it's happening to people with money. That's why they're paying attention to it.
Well, how about because this is an epidemic that's actually created by the government instead of one that's created by a black market? I mean, you're really looking at an opioid epidemic that's being financed and controlled by the United States government. Not that they intended it to be that way, although some people might believe that they did. The fact is, this is a regulated system that's distributing this death, right? This isn't some Mexican cartel we can blame it on, and it's not being created from Chinese components that are being shipped to Mexico. This is something that's coming directly from Pfizer and from Merck.
Worse than that, the Mexican cartel has decided that they're going to start adding fentanyl to the product they send, and that's killing people even quicker. Guys like me used to have to buy dope on the street, not heroin, but pills, because our doctors wouldn't prescribe enough.
Yeah. But heroin is the next natural step.
I tell my doctor straight up, you either prescribe me what I want, or I will make a phone call, and before I get to your parking lot, there will be a guy there willing to sell me either pills, which I no longer buy on the street, so I actually changed my little rap to the doctor, because I used to say I'd have a guy out there selling me pills before I could get out there. Now I tell him straight up, listen, I can buy much cleaner heroin on the street than I can buy any other drug. It's the same exact substance that you're offering me in pill form, and I don't have to put up with this bullshit.
Cheaper and easier to get. I mean, that's why those opiate is the real gateway, drug to something more difficult to deal with.
He says to me, I'm going to have to ask you for a urine screen. And I'm like, to be honest with you, I find those offensive. I'm willing to tell you everything you'll find. He says, yeah, what will I find? I said, I smoke copious amounts of marijuana. He said, I don't care about marijuana. I said, give me the little thing. I'll go piss in it for you. Then he comes back and he says, you take Valium, don't you? I'm like, yeah, that's what the doctor gave me for muscle relaxers because I'm having problems with muscles from the surgery. He says, I can't give you opiates if you're taking those muscle relaxers because both of them
breathing. Yep, shallow the breathing.
Shallow your breathing.
All right, numb it probably, yeah.
Right,
basically.
right. And you could die from it. And I said, you're telling me you're willing to prescribe me the oxys I want? What are you going to do for muscle relaxers? And he came up with something that I had never heard before. So I'll try it. Truth be told, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't help like the
Valium
does. I still have tightness that I didn't have. But how serious are you? And that's the next question we're going to have. Our conversation is, how serious are you that 15 milligrams of oxy every 8 hours with 5 milligrams of Valium every 4 hours? How serious are you that that's going to suppress my breathing? Because if you're talking about abuse, that's not an issue for me. So I'm willing to take the two side by side.
Have you had that exact regimen that you just described? Have you been used to taking those things together?
Well, as a pain patient, I've been used to taking twice as much together. But yes,
So, I mean, your own experience is that you don't get the shallow breathing. I mean, while it could happen and does happen to some people, you've already done it.
I'm a severe asthmatic, bro. I pay attention to my breathing better than I do anything else.
Right.
And I would know if I was having a hard time breathing.
I mean, that's just important. I mean, that should be important feedback for that doctor.
And it is. I mean, and here was the coolest thing. This never has happened to me. I've had doctors ask me, what do you want? I'll write you for what do you want? I don't care. This guy says, I want you to have my cell phone in case you have any questions. And he asks me for my cell phone number, and he calls me. And then he texts me his name. What doctor does that? Like, I'm not even going to wait till the next appointment to have the conversation I just discussed with you. I'm going to call him and say, listen, I'm not getting the muscle relaxation that I need. It's still tense and it hurts. And I shouldn't suffer. I shouldn't be in any pain. Nobody should be in pain for any reason. Now, I understand that there are people that can't take certain substances. And I understand that there are people that have problems when they take certain substances. After 3 weeks of taking any type of opiate, I'm dependent on it. My body goes through a withdrawal.
Oh.
But to be honest with you, and this is no offense to anybody that's had a problem with opiates, but I know what that withdrawal is going to feel like. And I know I'm going to feel shitty for a week. And you know what? I'd rather feel shitty for a week than be on pills for years.
And keep on dealing with getting the pills and shit. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And truth be told, I took opiate. I was on opiate pain relief for 9 years before I went to prison. I came off of opiates when I was in prison.
Oh, wow. That must have been fucked.
I was on 180 milligrams of methadone.
Holy shit.
I'd lost my health insurance, and they were giving me time release opiate. And I lost my health insurance, and the guy said, hey, it's $400 and something bucks a month for this time release. I can switch you over to methadone. It'll cost you $35 a month, and you'll get the same pain relief.
That's a tougher one to come off of too. The longer acting, the withdrawals from the longer acting medications like methadone, it
right.
kind of extends that withdrawal. Ooh, opiate withdrawal.
Trish, you can join us anytime if you want. If you want to come on some point, talk about the rally, perhaps, because we got.
But it was nice to have it was nice to have a good experience at the doctor.
Yeah, and he cared. He was worried about the interactions. He was, thinking it through, talking to you about what you're. Yeah,
and he cares.
That's some good stuff. Yeah.
And I've been thrown out of pain clinics because I tested positive for weed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I agreed with the doctor. We signed the opiate form. He crossed out the word marijuana, but he wasn't there 1 week. And a replacement doctor did a drug screen and said, oh, well, you got marijuana in your system. And I almost said I'm Adam freaking Brooke, for God's sakes. Of course I'm.
And the sky's blue. Yeah.
Right. But that wouldn't have mattered back then so much. But I understand the game that's being played. It's just unfortunate that there are people that are going and having surgery on their mouth and the doctor's giving them 3 days worth of pain medicine.
Yep.
Yeah.
What if it hurts for 4 days?
It's fucked up, man. There's, this.
That's what happens whenever you pass blanket regs that apply to everything. That there's always going to be individual exceptions, or at least there should be exceptions, and with a blanket policy, you can't.
And in the weed game, we're full of haters. So there are people that hate on opiates, and they talk horribly about the opiates.
Well, a lot of people have had bad experiences with it. Not that that's the bigger picture. That's
I
ideal,
agree.
but
I agree with you, Jamie. And trust me, with you here, I'm picking the words I use very carefully, because the reality is that there are people that hate on opiates. They say they're going in for surgery and they're not going to let the doctor give them any opiates. And I tell them they're a fool. Why would you suffer? Why would you not get on those opiates? Just make sure you don't have a source to get any more. That's the issue.
If you can, right, you can stay on
Yeah.
top of it like that. That's
this is just what a crappy conversation, Ed, because what we're talking about is pharmaceutical companies that got to a particular effective medicine, even though it totally fucks people up, and then they stopped R&D. They said, this is something we can market to people. This is something we can produce at an affordable rate where we can make a profit. And then they just stopped. Instead of continuing to refine it in a way where we would take the addictive properties out but keep all the good things. Or perhaps discover new properties that we hadn't even considered before.
Well,
it just seems like, God.
And if you watch the documentaries that were made about the family that owned and I forget who I'm talking
Sachs, the Sachs, the Purdue farm
Yeah.
we're talking about?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
that how they pushed this stuff on doctors and told them that it wasn't addicting. Are you kidding? I'm a boy. Let me tell you all the things that are addicting that started about 8, 9, 12 years old. Okay? Of course it's addicting. It makes people feel good. Anything that makes people feel good is addicting.
They rewarded those doctors with things like trips and Caribbean resort things, and they would have these wonderful pharmaceutical conferences, all expenses paid. Colleen says, "I run from opiates is a good thing too." I absolutely would, and I don't want to rush this conversation, but I do want to go back to the whole Gage Cookies laying off a whole bunch of people conversation.
Yeah, well, I was going to bring that back, and then there was a follow-up question that was also answered. That's some interesting stuff. Yeah, so it continues. I don't mean to cut you off, Adam, but I want to say before we get into this,
that's a huge thing to talk about. I'm not even sure how it's legal what they did.
So there's been, and I think Stacy could probably clarify, but there's been something like around 7,000 people kind of laid off from the industry or otherwise disconnected from their jobs, and this is some recent stuff. And
152. I said 125. It's 152. That's even worse.
Yep. And then Baked Tater followed up the question with from Grow Operation store employees, and then the answer was both salaried and hourly people let go unexpectedly.
My question is, and I thought about this the other night, I encourage everybody listening to call that company and apply for a job there. Because here's what I think they're doing. I think they're trying to replace as many people they can at a couple dollars less. Because that makes all the difference in the world in what they're doing. They need people. You can't do this without people. I just think that they were trying to maybe lighten the payroll load a little bit.
Well, I will tell you. Go ahead, Anton.
I was saying, I heard it was more of a huge nut that they couldn't crack from an investment standpoint, and to meet those obligations that they weren't able to possibly meet. And I think that's what led to the down. It is what I heard. All hearsay, of course, but it seems like it was a very complicated issue that involved a huge amount of money.
In order to support that concept, and that's exactly what I believe it is too. People that got very big loans, millions and millions of dollars of loans several years ago, the piper has come due. There's just an article in Green Market Report, and the Green Market Report article is titled 10 multi-state cannabis companies owe $500 million in federal taxes, and that includes at least 5 or 6 of those 10 have operations here in Michigan. So you're looking at companies that really have a bigger tax burden than we might have estimated, in addition to these loan payments that are coming due too. So they may have some kind of a corporate, scythe wielder who's just going through and saying every single department must cut 15% of your employees, and that's it. It doesn't matter. And that's how you get those kind of numbers, like we just saw, 152 people chopped out. And
so much percentage per quarter or something like that.
Need people to run the business, right? Go ahead, Jamie.
Yeah. No. Just I was kind of supporting what you were saying. There's so much percentage of the total workforce per period of time, and you stay within certain limits, and all.
They've proven that you don't need 8 bud tending stations and 8 bud tenders sitting around. They proved that generally the week or the second week after they opened. My concern is that they've got people in grows that aren't going to be able to handle things, and they're going to have to hire more people. And they're going to hire $12 an hour people as opposed to $14 and $15 an hour people.
Yeah, there's some of that going on. One of the reasons why, why there needs to be some workers' rights education. Maybe the unions. I mean, not maybe, but there's a big push, to get that type of structure involved.
Right, but we also need some information. We need to know these things. So that's why I suggest people apply for jobs at these places. I mean, do we know what they're doing exactly? Because what they're trying to do is make that nut. And they're coming up short on that, but they
weirdly estimated, it's been brought up in the comments, and Rick's alluded to it. They weirdly estimated how things were going to go and caught themselves in a.
But you just
some of them anyway.
Close so many locations. You still need staff, and again, I thought it was illegal to lay off more than 100 people at a time.
Maybe that is a cutoff, but I thought that the lawyer said when we did our special workers' rights edition that the lawyer there said it was a formula based on a percentage of the total workforce over a period of time.
Okay, so it could be. I thought the national.
I'm not an expert on it, man. I mean, Stacy probably knows here. Has been chiming in.
I wonder if people from other states that are making decisions about chopping people are aware of this rule in Michigan. I wonder if maybe a workers' advocate might want to look into that to see if this would violate some kind of a rule. I was totally unaware that you can't.
The lawyer did say that sometimes they fuck up on this.
Right,
because they don't pay attention, or a lot of people don't challenge. But when you catch them with the wrong numbers, there is some action that can be taken and stuff. So maybe that is a scenario.
And I'll be honest, I think it'd be really cool to get the National Labor Relations Board on the ass of some of these cannabis companies. I mean, I've been fighting for years to legitimize weed. Okay, now it looks like the government's going to Al Capone a whole bunch of people. Which that you haven't legitimized anything like you have when you go after somebody for something
for tax evasion
that's totally not related to the crime you are accusing them of committing every day.
And by the way, the IRS doesn't care that it's federally illegal that you're selling cannabis. All they know is that you owe money, and they don't care about your fucking excuses. Just like with the Basor case and the Duval case and all the other cases, the federal court doesn't care about your state legal rules. You sold, you owe, and if you don't pay, you go. That's how it is. They don't fuck around.
My question is this: who wins? The investors aren't winning because they're not getting their money back. The licensees don't win because they're shutting the doors. The employees don't win because they're getting laid off. And ultimately, the consumers don't win.
They don't win either.
Because we're getting fucked over because of this is a supply chain issue as well.
For access, an unstable supply chain means you can't count on those strains that you need to loosen up Adam's muscles or to make Jamie, not be a crazy man.
I think that the real winner are the people that are currently in for 30, 20, 30, $40 million. Those are the winners because they're starting to get out and they're making room for the $100 million guys. Yeah. Now, when I tell you that the guy that owns the greenhouse in Amsterdam, the self-appointed king of cannabis, pulled out of Canada, had invested hundreds of millions of dollars, and then pulled out because their system was so bad. And it wasn't even the system that he signed up for. His complaint was he would be mid-crop and the rules would change. And if you're good, and this is a guy this is a Dutchman. They don't do business the Canadian or the American way. They do business the old Dutch way. and they don't play ball like that. And he pulled his investment out of Canada. 100 million guys. That's what's coming next. And these investors that are due their money now, listen, losing 20 or 40 million dollars when you're an investment company is no big deal. It's a write-off because you got big money other places. So when you ask who the winners are, of course it's none of us. It couldn't possibly be set up so that the people in need actually win. That would be un-American.
Well, the communities where businesses are located are going to see some more vacant buildings, and there will be a delay between closing and somebody buying that business. It's not as if it was when it was before, where people would snatch up whatever building you want. We've had people on this show talking about real estate values and how they've plummeted. Even though opportunity seems more scarce, the frightening aspects of this industry. You know what? Shredder's correct. Attorneys always win.
Always.
Those are the people that facilitate things like dissolution of companies. They win. They're the ones.
Yeah.
But Colleen, good. Thank goodness, no sign of MS for you.
And that's why
A lot of cannabis use and mushroom. Yep.
But that's why all your good friends become attorneys. Because they know that they can screw people without actually screwing them, because they're just doing the best they can on their behalf.
Well, they're just performing a service that somebody needs. And a businessman gets himself into that position. You can't blame the attorney for the fact that the businessman needs legal service.
Sometimes the hate for the attorney comes from the kind of a fantasy of the client's expectations.
That's exactly right.
Well, I'll tell you, the hate of the attorney comes from watching television, because I watch the 6 o'clock news and I see commercials about ambulance chasers. Camp Lejeune. Did you drink the water at Camp Lejeune? We'd love to represent you. No fee until you get paid.
It's been the same conversation at least since Shakespeare days, right?
And all these other guys coming out of the woodwork to try and suck your business up for whatever Flint water crisis or Sanford Dam failure lawsuit you might have.
Rick, I hate to say this. Many times, those lawsuits, when they are settled, require an advertising budget and require those not certain lawyers, but require lawyers to get paid to let the people know that this is actually happening. And it's part of the lawsuit. It's part of the settlement of the lawsuit that they have to let people know. And they end up hiring, like you just said, the Camp Lejeune thing is the current popular, attorney fiasco. And everybody's getting in on it.
Class action stuff. Yeah.
Guys that don't need to get in on it are getting in on it.
No, the suing for Roundup is another good one too. Anton, that was mentioned in the comments. USMC is not really letting the Camp Lejeune guys know about it. So, what's the solution to that?
Well, the solution should be you go to the VA, and the VA would compensate you. But good luck with that. Really, at the end of the day, I always go back to our soldiers, airmen, Marines, the military. We are expendable resources. We are, I got the cancer from the burn pits. I slept outside the burn pits in Iraq. I sucked in the smoke. I got cancer. I was lucky I survived. But the real story at the end of the day, which is a shame, is no, the Marine Corps, the military, DOD, nobody is reaching out to you, because really your best interest is not their best interest. It's all about liability. It's all about protecting the brand, because the military is a brand. It's the most powerful brand in the world, right? So you're just expendable, and you have to come to terms.
Yeah, those football things. That's not the football team or the league just deciding to give tribute to the military. That's the military paying to promote themselves in front of that huge ass audience, right?
It's a brand.
The last thing the military wants is for the people who have participated to come out and expose how we commit war.
It's built into the culture.
What we do, right? I mean, you
think about it.
You are barred from talking about 90% of what you did, whether it was moral, legal, it doesn't matter. You can't talk about it. So when we, as dumb Americans, think that it's time to send a group of guys over to Afghanistan, really? If we knew what was going on over there, would we send our people?
You watch out for Brazil. That's the next place. Bolsonaro will not give up power. He's a little Trump. He's going to lose this election. He's not going to honor it. And he's going to have the military coup. Brazil is the largest democracy in the South American sphere. It's huge. And it's hanging by a thread. That's the next place the United States is going to put our people in peril. Watch.
The world is in peril here. China, there was rumors that the old Xi Jinping there got he's under house arrest. I don't know if they've confirmed that, but those were the rumors going around that the world is fucked at this point in time. Like, unless we get our shit together, and I hope we go that route.
Just waiting to explode.
Yeah.
The problem is the United States has been fucking the world for a long time. I like that smile, Anton, because it means a lot to me.
Yep.
Okay? Because the reality is that the Vietnam War was ended when enough people watched TV at night and saw casket after casket coming off the airplanes. The military no longer shows that. They do not show. The once in a while when they're moving a body and they can, do a little bit at the airport and get some positive press and make everybody wait on the plane while they remove the casket from underneath. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking when they watched 45,000 people come back in boxes. They weren't happy with that war. And ever since, our government stopped showing that stuff.
Here's the reality of the situation, whether it applies to the cannabis industry at the CEO level, whether you're talking about the commandant of the U.S. Marine Corps, whether you're talking about the president of the United States. Nobody gets there because they're a good person and because they were doing it right. Guys like me who will speak up, we're the last guys that get to the top, even though what we're trying to do is the right thing, right? In order to get to those positions, to be elevated to the positions of power, it never is. You're never coming into it with clean hands. I mean, I can't. And Teddy Roosevelt, maybe like one good example, like the Roosevelts. Those were people that got to power that I felt like that's a respectable person, and they did it in a way that it made sense. But as a country, as a cannabis industry, these CEOs that are coming into the game, are they coming into this with clean hands, with the best interest of their employees and whatnot? And oftentimes it's just the answer is no. And it's so frustrating, but that is our culture. That is capitalism. That is America. And it just, I don't know what the answer is at this point. I don't know how you fix it. I don't think you can.
I think what we're really looking at here is just a conditioning of Western society. We're not the only nation that suffers from this, although we're very American-centric to a greater degree. Germany, England, Canada, France, especially, some of them are very vulnerable, and also some of them have right-wing extremisms that are rising now. It's similar to the way that we have here in the United States. I mentioned Bolsonaro from Brazil. He's a real threat. He's a former soldier, and he's very tight with the military. And if he chose to ignore the results of an election, he might have some significant assistance with that. But the fact of the matter is we're looking at society that is slow to change. And our attitudes have changed very rapidly, but society in general and the workings of society don't change nearly as quickly. And that creates additional friction, even though there's already friction between different ideologies and different races. So now in America, we just have so many different sources of friction. So cannabis is the one thing that can bring us all together. Cannabis, we know, crosses all socioeconomic boundaries, crosses all racial boundaries. It can be a substance that unites. But yet we still see, look at Illinois. Illinois has a huge battle over social equity right now, where the people who are supposed to be receiving social equity feel like they're being taken advantage of by outstate sources who are winning a majority of the different licenses. And that was a similar complaint that they had in Ohio as well. So giving lip service to something like social equity isn't going to resolve any of the ills of society. And if anything can resolve ills, I think cannabis can. I mean, I'm sorry to still be a believer in the bud, but I do believe that we have healing properties in cannabis that haven't been explored. We have socioeconomic benefits from cannabis that I think far exceed what we allow for alcohol. When Arts Beats and Eats says I want every place in a 5 square mile radius to be selling booze, but no, don't you bring that cannabis around here. We can flip that.
Well,
And
you know
then-
what's
Well,
I was going to say, Rick, what is when you take a deeper look into things, what is the one thing most, if not all, cannabis, I'd say consumers or patients or however you want to break it down, what's the one thing we all have in in common? And it's trauma, right? Trauma as a country, trauma is trauma that's happened in our own personal lives. In the cannabis eases that trauma, right? And it lowers your inhibitions to where you can have meaningful conversations and talk about problems that may not get hashed out in normal society. And that, to me, that part of the culture is what can bring about real change. And Adam, I mean, you've been around, geez, for forever. I mean, can you attest to that? Like, some of my best friends I've ever met have been over smoking a joint, and those are my dearest relationships that I have.
oh, definitely. I'm a big believer in the fact that weed brings all kinds of people together. People that hate each other, it brings them together. And if you study symbolism in America, and you know what you're looking at, one day you will see a guy with an arm, and on that arm will be a tattoo, and that's a white power, a white supremacy tattoo, and he passes that roach over, or that joint over, to a black guy. Now, outside of the weed game, he has nothing to do with black people. And there are black people that have nothing to do with white people outside of the weed game. I get that. But weed brings them all together. It always has. That's my big thing. That was my big thing with Hash Bash. It was about inviting anybody and everybody that was involved, to the point that I caught shit for a few years that there were no women speakers. I'm sorry. The phone rings. People say, hey, I'd like to be a speaker at Hash Bash. I go, who are you? Oh, well, my name's Anton, and I got this veterans group. Oh, okay, well, I don't have any veterans groups yet. Why don't you come on? There were no female activists at one point. We had Kathy Kennedy. We had Renee Emery Wolf. Name 6 more, you can't. But these were people that were, at the time, willing to get up and say something. Now, it's really about, I've said this many times, it's about changing attitudes. And as we've changed the attitude relating to marijuana, where it's no longer the devil's lettuce, with those people that say it's the devil's lettuce, those are religious people that truly believe it's the devil's lettuce. That's not a nickname. That's some serious shit. Those are believers. And you're not going to just convince them by changing the law. It's going to take a while. And I love all this crazy shenanigans and chaos, because what it's going to enable us to do is, in a year, a couple years, whatever it is, we're going to be able to go forward, and we're going to be able to explain that, first of all, the sky didn't fall when you people did what you said you were, what the law required you to do. The sky didn't fall. None of the things you say are true. We've proven that now scientifically. And the reality is that you've destroyed thousands and thousands and thousands of tens of thousands of lives over your racist war on drugs. Clearly racist. I mean, like, the letter from President Nixon explains how racist it is. And we don't have to make this shit up. It's there. It talks about it. Now, I believe that's a lot. I believe the war on drugs started by Nixon to go after black people and Hispanics is a lot different than this concept that people have tried to explain to me over the years, that, well, the reason weed was made illegal in 1937 and the reason weed was kept illegal was to go after minorities. I have a much harder time believing that than I do the president of the United States spelling it out word for word. Okay. And I like to point out that the black market will reign supreme. We've been at this for over 100 years. The last 40 years, we had war declared against us. They lost, and they're still fighting.
I use that all the time when I say, you know, people want to ramp up or tax against caregivers or against the illegal market. I said, look, all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't stop it. When you had every law enforcement agent across the whole USA sniffing out cannabis everywhere they could find it, you still couldn't stop it. And when you had every border patrol guy hunting for cannabis, you couldn't stop it. And now you have less public interest in attacking cannabis. You have less resources available to you, and you have a lesser opportunity to be able to completely do that. So why bother investing money in something that's going to be a lost cause? You have no chance of winning.
And how about the little sneaky thing they did where they convinced people with weed that they didn't convince them. They clearly says it on the line. You have to check and sign on the federal form, but they told people with weed you can't have guns. So that meant when their front door exploded, nobody shot. I mean, Anton, if your front door exploded, wouldn't you shoot at whatever was coming through?
I leave my door open. If you want to come on in, you can face the music. But no, I'll tell you what. No, Adam, that's a huge issue. And there's a big lawsuit going on in Florida right now regarding the Second Amendment rights of cannabis patients among the veteran population as well. You know, veterans, a lot of cannabis patients, they like their guns. It's a big issue right now.
How about this? There's only one. There's a Bill of Rights. There's one right they can take away from you. They're not taking away the 15th Amendment. They don't have the balls. They don't take away the First Amendment. They try to limit it. The Fourth Amendment, they'll infringe on it, but all you got to do is catch them and they got problems. They can't deny you the Fifth Amendment, but for some reason we allow them to deny us the Second Amendment. And it's not just people like you good people who are just cannabis users. It's people like me who are felons who no longer have the right to protect our land and our people and our property because we were convicted of a felony.
Right.
It doesn't
there's a range of interpretations of Second Amendment. There are the issues with the felon.
So guess what, fellas? When they finally call up the militia, guess who's not participating? I'm sitting that one out. The Second Amendment clearly talks about the militia. And I'm not playing militia. I'm going to go play Barbie with my daughters because I can't play militia. They won't let me.
Well, with that pink arm cast, you're going to fit right into the Barbie world, man. I know we got Latricia's joined us now, and she's got an event coming up too. We should probably give her a little bit of time.
And we are honored because she's welcome here all the time, but not all the time does she choose to come on and grace us with her presence. So we appreciate it.
I just don't want to sit here and just feel stupid and not be able to be part of the conversation if I don't know anything about it. I'd rather listen and learn sometime. So.
Don't want you to feel stupid, but
no, when I feel like I got more to learn, I'll take it.
No, I appreciate you being here today. Go ahead, Adam. I'm sorry, man.
I just wanted to say her opinion is valued.
Thank you.
And that's what a lot of people don't understand is that because she deals with who she deals with and because she does what she does, her opinion is valued, in my opinion, much more than my opinion. I've dealt with these idiots in the past. She's dealing with these idiots right now. And
she is patient and she does a lot of thorough research. And
thank you. Yeah, absolutely.
It works out well for all of us.
Well, that's kind of what kind of brought us to the whole point of this rally, which is kind of exciting. after, I'm pretty sure all of us sitting here right now can kind of see the whole big picture across the board in every space in the arena. And there's a lot of things that need innovation in Michigan in the cannabis space. And I think that it's going to be a great idea that we start talking to each other about these social issues, these issues that are happening all around us. And the rally is a perfect experience for that. Like you were saying before, there's a lot of backlash that you get in this experience. I've just learned to kind of talk people off the shelf a little bit. But this experience is going to be able to bring patients, caregivers, veterans, business owners, employees, entrepreneurs, even consumers, anybody that's really involved in the cannabis community are going to be able to get there and get some value out of it. And they're also going to have an opportunity to learn a lot, which is, I didn't know very much about social equity, and I now realize that there's issues in social equity in the state. There needs to be some clear definitions of what those are. And then there are some things that need to be removed, in my own opinion, that can be done. We know that there are issues, obviously, with the grant money through the state. We're also dealing with a lot of labor issues. I was actually watching earlier when you guys were talking about all the layoffs. That's another thing too, because, obviously, like I've told you before, I've come from a very long line of union family members, auto industry, and it is a thought to think who is going to be responsible, or who's going to have to pay for this experience when they get laid off. It's usually the people, right? Well, where's their protection? That's another thing that will be discussed there when we have the event. It goes on and on. We have food trucks, we have speakers, we have Dr. Bridget William coming, which is going to be a cool thing. We have speakers that are going to be surprised. You're going to be surprised to see some of these people. And I think one of the coolest things that we have going on here right now is the ambassadorship program. That has really, to me, seemed like it's brought a lot of people together.
Hey, let's and we're talking about the event, but I'm not sure. Maybe we did, but let's make sure we know when and where and all that kind of stuff.
So it's the Michigan Cannabis Harvest Rally, and it's October 11th at the state capitol from noon to 5.
I am interested in that ambassador program. Please explain about that.
Yeah.
Sure. So in my experience, especially with what I do, where I shine the most is obviously in networking and marketing. And one of the best things that you can ever have within your marketing sector, especially, is an organic audience. So what we did is we created a conversation with a lot of business owners, growers, individuals, you name it, anybody that has some type of business or organization or within the cannabis community to show that they support the cannabis community and that they support the rally. We have offered to put their logo on a template, and we connect their social media handles to that template through our social media platforms and through multiple other avenues that we have, our email campaigns of that nature, just to show the community that they support one another. And along the way, there's probably, I'd say right now we have about 120 of these ambassadors and growing every day, because everybody wants to be a part of something that's positive that's happening right now. We want to have a celebration with the community. We want to be able to look at the issues that we have here, look at them constructively, and see the people that are working on them, and gain some valuable information and ways that you can contribute and help with these situations. It doesn't have to be full-fledged activism, but it's sharing information, it's sending an email, it's giving $5 to an organization. It's just generally, being a part of the community where people need the love and they also need the help to be able to move forward. So this rally really means a lot as far as starting to join us together, put us all in numbers, and to show the legislators as a group, as residents in Michigan, what we voted for in 2008 and 2018 is what we voted for, and that's the way we want to keep it.
Right on. Of course, there's lame duck sessions coming up, and that's a scary time. And it's a good time to remind people that we're keeping an eye on this. We really don't want them to peel back any existing rights or privileges or impose any costly, difficult restrictions on the existing systems. And we need to get through that time, and then we
Do
can
you guys
start
know-
again next session.
Do you guys know, has the Michigan State Police made any changes so far since they stopped doing blood testing?
They were going to get a third-party lab to step in, and I'm not sure if that's in place yet, but that's what they were going to do next.
Well, those are topics that are going to be spoken about. We're hoping we can get a sheriff, a big sheriff in town in the state of Michigan that will be able to come out and talk about that.
When you say that means somebody's already being discussed with, but it's not.
Yeah,
confirmed.
there is somebody who's being discussed with, but we might not be able to get him. But we would like to be able to get somebody, just like a police enforcement point of view from their side. You know what I mean? Like, we always can just assume what they think, and a lot of people do. But I feel like bringing somebody who has a voice in this space that will be able to talk about it, maybe add some comfort, or just inform people of what to expect or what they can do now in comparison. Because kind of some people are just empty-handed. Like we were talking before. I mean, some of this testing is relied on whether people are going to get out of drug court or whether they're on probation or not, because there are places that still say you can't have cannabis if you're on probation, regardless of what the changes are. It's the thing that they will go ahead and agree to. But if you know what that is, all that is just money waiting to happen.
Man,
in the back of my
sorry, go
mind-
ahead, Rick.
In the back of my mind, I think I read an article that said the Michigan State Police had resumed testing blood because they resolved whatever reagent problem they had, and so they were charging forward. I don't recall what that was, and I need to read it again to be sure, but I think I remember that.
They're aiming to use more sophisticated equipment. I don't think that's in place yet. They might have the third-party lab filling in the gaps until they get that in place. So, but God damn it! I
get it.
Something in my fucking brain doesn't work. as everybody knows who's been watching this.
It would be interesting to listen to law enforcement talk about.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry.
ahead.
Adam, you helped spark that neuron, man.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. There was just an article a couple days ago. Gus Burns. He's been continuing to follow this. A lot of the other journalists haven't followed it up. And the state police have said they've got nothing more to say. Their last statement about it is as much as they have to say about it right now. Right. So if there was somebody by October 11th willing to say more than what's already publicly known, that would be a really good situation. Of course, the sheriff's not state police, but that's still somebody very knowledgeable,
But it would be fun if law enforcement came and bitched about some of the tools of the trade that they were losing, because now they can't this and they can't that. They were bummed when smell meant you couldn't pull everybody out of the car, because now the black guy actually has to commit a traffic offense to get the driver out of the car. He didn't have to do anything before that. All that had to happen was the cop claimed.
I still think some of that happens, though.
Oh, I'm sure it happens, bro.
Yeah,
Some old stuff still gets implemented, even the can't smoke on probation stuff. Sometimes those. I just saw an order that a lawyer got a few days ago, which was winning the challenge that that the judge was saying that the person couldn't use on probation, and the lawyer had to challenge it and get a ruling saying, yeah, you can, because this has already been looked at. All that kind of stuff.
Agree to it. Yeah. Like I said, money wait to happen. They want to find one little space that they can guarantee someone's going to fail at, and that's how it works.
We talked before last week about traffic stops and how traffic stops are utilized to generate resources, and how most felons get caught from traffic stops, and that's their revenue stream, man.
listen, this is not anything we're making up. They have talked about, law enforcement has talked about how if they can pull over a black or brown person, they are more likely to find a weapon in that car. That's their attitude, their mental attitude. So they're looking for any reason they
There's
can.
profiling in different ways that manifests itself in different areas around the state.
Correct. And this weed thing, I mean, I'd love to hear about places where smelling like weed is a problem. I'd love to hear about those places. I got friends that'll show up in those places.
It's all part of this weird transition.
Probable cause always been used by police to justify things. I think I see a weapon in the seat. I need to pull you out so I can check and for my own safety to make sure there's no weapon there. I think I smelled this. I need to pull you out so I can check your car. There's so many ways that they can get around things. I think I grew up in an era where we believed the police could do whatever they wanted to do, whether it was legal or not, because they could always make an excuse that worked in the court. And
yeah, even if they get challenged and lose an overly aggressive investigation, there's no real consequences.
You would never do that.
Right.
Growing up in Flint in the 80s, you would never do that. You got your ass beat by the cops. You were glad they didn't throw you in the clink. You got thrown in the clink. You were glad they didn't take you to court. You went to court. Maybe you got a lawyer in there, but you took your bruise, you took your bloody eye, and you sucked it up, and you went home, right? And then learn to avoid that cop in the future. That's how things went. So,
yeah.
Which was different than a place like Oakland County, where they made rules because they were tired of their neighbors who didn't look like them coming into their community and committing crime. So they made all kinds of rules that made it very difficult. Dick Thompson was the prosecutor that started that process. Made it very difficult for people from the city of Detroit to defend themselves for crimes where they were going to go after a mandatory minimum.
You remember they wanted to put a wall on 8 Mile, Adam? They wanted to literally put a big wall on 8 Mile to stop people from coming across.
I kind of vaguely remember those discussions, man. I mean, that's so. I mean, I don't remember the details or ever now, but that's enough right there to realize how fucking stupid that conversation must have been.
Well, that was L. Brooks and his hatred.
Well, right, and L. Brooks Patterson, who was the lawyer for the anti-busing campaign. So when we think of him as a prosecutor, we have to understand that before he was a prosecutor, he was a racist lawyer. So we then elected a racist lawyer as our prosecutor.
So, you know what, Rob, I just want to point this out, just maybe a perspective here. Some people become a police officer because they really want to be a civil servant and they really want to help people out. And they really want to keep the peace. And then they get in there and the system is fucked up and it's more like a cash register, and the things that end up producing revenue are the things that get focused on. That's not necessarily the important crimes. And, it's just a mess.
But it's worse than that, Jamie. And this is something that Anton can attest to because he was in the military. And
he's also been involved with police departments and stuff, right?
Rob, I was a cop, buddy. Yeah, no, I was a Fed, but yeah.
But the point is, when you're taught to watch each other's back and cover for each other, I don't care how good a cop you are. You saw a partner or witnessed another officer violate the law or break the rules. And I ask every cop I meet, because they all tell the truth and they all show how horrible they are. And that is that, no, they do not write their name on a complaint form that they saw such and such an officer commit such and such a crime. It's just now starting to happen.
I'll say this. I actually worked internal affairs for years. I hung plenty of cops out to dry for doing bullshit. I think, again, like it's a perspective thing. I mean, when you get guys coming out of the military, we like to serve. the natural progression of service for a lot of us is a law enforcement type job. We believe in the system. You do get in, and I've seen plenty of fucked up shit in the system. And I'll
the
tell you
local
this,
state departments have a lot more
But-
weird shit going on.
weird
than
shit.
what-
I will say
than
that
what you
having
were
worked
dealing
in
with, probably.
what I was dealing with,
Yeah.
I will say I have seen some of the worst shit I ever seen was at the local and state level. The Fed level is a little bit different.
Right, but
you 100%.
does-
Yeah.
Does the state and local level requires you as an officer to turn in any crimes you see? Do the feds require that?
If you see a crime, yeah, absolutely. I mean, shit.
Okay,
I mean,
so when your partner commits a crime, his name should be on a report, right?
what's
That
the? I
sounds
don't.
real.
So he means more like you were internal affairs. That's not
Yeah.
necessarily
No, once
that's-
it's in internal affairs, it's too.
Right. He
it's
means like
already
the he
made
means
it
like
on it.
the cop that might not break the law
Yeah,
themselves, not turning in those who they see.
Yeah.
Correct.
Sure.
Making
Yeah.
those types of
That's
violations.
where that's where the concept of all cops are bad comes from.
Yeah.
It comes from not good cops not turning in bad cops.
I think it's wrong to say that good cops have to be 100% all the time, ever, never make a mistake. And if you make one mistake or if you don't report one thing, that makes you not a good
On some
cop. I
level,
think
there are people willing to put their
there's
lives
lots
on the
of-
line
lots
and
of
to
good
go out and
cops
do a
that-
job.
But
Lots
we
of good
entrust
cops out
these
there.
people. We entrust these people with certain abilities, and
they're not Jesus Christ.
They abuse their
They're
authority.
fallible
they
human
abuse
beings
their
who-
authority.
Who can
Yep.
still do
Right.
very well at their job and respect the communities that they work for and still not 100%
or
be
many do.
completely
Well,
Well,
perfect.
sorry,
You can't
sorry about
expect
that.
that level from them or we'll constantly be disappointed.
Go ahead,
Well,
Latrish.
this specific topic that we're talking about is another thing that we're going to have conversations with and speakers about at the rally. Convictions and expungements. Where are we with convictions right now? Are they happening? We've reached out to the Michigan State Police Department on multiple occasions to see what type of information we can get about to find out if there's so many of these horrible homegrows that are out there being told and testimonials and Lansing and whatnot. So, obviously we've had this conversation before where the burden of truth is on them, but it's never really admired or even really brought to the table. So we wanted to find out how bad these grows really are. And like I said, they told us it would take them 2 years to be able to provide that information to us and $175,000 to retain it.
Is that a FOIA request, Trish?
Right.
That's what they do. They discourage people from FOIA by making it incredibly expensive and talking about how difficult it will be. With the Michigan Cannabis Freedom Coalition and the Cannabis Caucus of the Michigan Democratic Party, we got a list of current prisoners incarcerated for cannabis from the state of Michigan, and they at one point flooded us with like 2,000 names, Jamie, I believe.
Yeah, and some were like murderers and shit like that, man. It was kind of weird. I mean, I don't know if there was any ill intent, but it was not like really within the confines of what we were requesting.
I mean,
So-
it seemed like there was.
So
but,
Rob's, I want to point out this. Rob says this, and I kind of agree with it. I kind of think there needs to be an overhaul of perspective for policing. I mean, now a lot of cops won't even live in the communities where they are policing, so it's all the negative interactions that they purposefully kind of engage in to keep investigations going, to force arrests or seizures or whatever.
Well,
Community policing and not fucking worrying about a lot of shit that's not
that's-
really involving any victim or anything like
But
that. Go ahead, Ed.
Be
I'm
home
sorry.
instead of drive them to jail. Come on, do that.
I'll say this, and I say this with confidence. You will probably not find another person, I'll say in the state of Michigan, but potentially in this country, with the experience that I've had, with the perspective that I've had. And that perspective was dealt and informed dealing on the inside, right? And I seen some shit, right? And nobody, having done that job, agrees with a lot of the issues that everybody has brought up here. I believe a lot of the traffic stops need to be overhauled. I believe civil asset forfeiture is fucking bullshit, and I believe that needs to be overhauled. I believe nobody should be put in prison because of a plant, right? And I hold those beliefs dear and near to my heart. But a lot of that perspective was based on doing a job that a lot of people didn't agree with. But I loved my service, and I loved the job that I did. And I did some great things, and I put some very, very bad, horrible people in prison for doing some horrible things, right? And I believe that it was my duty. And did you see things on the job that I questioned? I'll tell you this, I can say with confidence, anything that I ever saw that was bullshit was definitely addressed. I never seen, I don't say any crimes or anything like that. Like I said, it's different at the Fed level. At the state and local level, I absolutely seen some bullshit, and that bullshit was called out every single time. Because here's the deal: is I had a family to support as well, and I'm not going to go down for anybody's bullshit decision, right? And the first thing that happens when they haul old boy off to jail for beating the shit out of somebody is I go with them, right? So there is definitely a liability and a protection thing, not only for the public in that it's wrong and that it's against the law, but there's a lot of liability involved with that as well. So
Did you ever perform investigations on local and state?
I worked, yeah. I mean, yeah. When I worked for Treasury, and when I was with ATI, I did a lot of every law you can think of that may have been enforced, from fucking wire fraud and securities fraud to explosives and arson. I worked it, and I seen it, and I worked with every single agency in the country, with every 3 letters you can think of, every local, all the way up, and I've seen it all. And I can honestly say 90, I'll say high 90% of the people I ever ran across were good people who were doing their job and believed in protecting the public. But
it doesn't take much for there to be some issues, though.
Exactly, right? Yeah, it's the small percentage of people that ruin it, and it's sad, and I hate to see that. Yep.
I point this out to you. Fox Television had to remove their #1 TV show, Cops, because they realized that what they were showing was cops committing violent acts against people they were arresting, and not appropriate the rules of the police department.
Use of force issues.
Yeah, they weren't using proper procedure.
Right.
Proper procedure, right.
Use of force issues, and that goes back to training. Like we say, like it's a training thing, and you get a lot of younger people that get onto the job, and really it comes down to life experience. You're dealing with everybody's a bad guy until, right? And this leads to these negative encounters when dealing with the public is really, it's a skill, right? And the only way you develop that skill is by doing it and by interacting. But cops, there's
some training we hear about that balances the scales toward plowing over civil rights and kind of continuing the investigation,
Look,
but things are changing now. Mm-hmm. We now have police officers in the last year who have been sent to prison.
Yeah, that was unheard of.
For crimes they've committed, which is completely unheard of, which is why this concept of defund the police is really refund the police. Mm-hmm. And let's educate these people how not to be what they once were. And I like to point out that when Coleman Young became mayor of the city of Detroit, he promised the Detroiters that he would, and I hate to use the word darken, but this is what he said, that he would darken the police force because it was a white police force in a city that was becoming predominantly black. And
is that the quote? He used those words? I mean, that's what you're saying?
Oh, he said, yeah.
Okay, just curious. I mean, just for yeah.
And here's the problem with that,
to be
that's
correct,
more like a summary than an actual citation. So
here's the problem. He also lowered the standard. So all you needed was a high school education. No problem. Cops all across America only need a high school education.
And then you're going to get trained, presumably.
That's not where the problem is. The problem is you have some 50 or 60-year-old white guy.
Yeah, we talked about this before.
Some 18 or 19-year-old black kid how to become a police officer, not how to become a black police officer, not how to become a white police officer, because, well, I remember separated the two at the time, but how to become a police officer. And that didn't help what they were trying to help.
That seems like some friction that could happen. And I'm sorry I was interjecting because I remembered. I remember listening to former chief of police Ike McKinnon at University of Detroit one time, and he was talking about some of the severe racial friction taking place from within the department.
Oh yeah,
where he would be out with a white partner for the patrol, and that dude wouldn't say a word to him. The whole time that they're
Pointed
out there.
a gun at him once.
they would have fist fights, right?
He had a fellow officer point a gun at him.
Yeah, I've heard this story. I'll just say this about cops. We talked about that just briefly, but at the end of the run there, though, they had lost a lot of viewership because they were being too passive. So they started to edit cops to show a lot more brutality and to focus on things in a way that showed police in a more aggressive way, simply to get viewership, which again distorted the perception of how police were actually behaving out there, because the editing of it was done for a purpose that was not a law enforcement purpose. It was for production values. And that really was a result of having been in what was it, 30 fucking years, Adam? It was the hugest, longest running thing. But after 30 years, you lose your viewership if you're not remaining controversial. And that's how they did it.
And one of the biggest things now, which I think is cooler than cool, is these guys that go out and audit the police. If you've ever seen one of their videos, it's the greatest thing in the world.
It's done a few different ways, though. I think some are better than others, but go ahead.
Yeah.
But if you can get a cop or a police officer, so I don't use a pejorative term, if you can get a police officer to admit that he doesn't know what he's talking about, but he's still trying to enforce some form of law, and then his supervisor shows up on the scene and says, we're all done here. Have a nice day. It's over. Thank you very much.
So, Dad, the Michigan Constitutional Crusader goes around to a lot of dispensaries and shit like that, and tries to invoke some conflict. That's you know what? I mean, I don't like dislike them for this or whatever. They are like doing what they're allowed to do, and they're that kind of stuff. But I don't necessarily prefer the stirring it up on purpose type ones. The ones that are prepared to document what's going on in a real interaction and bust them on bad procedures those are the ones that are a little bit more meaningful.
Don. I mean, my God, Don's perfect with that. You know what I'm talking about, Jamie.
This comes down, I could point out three things that are real potential problems. Number one, we need police officers in volume, right? But the reality is the disposition of a police officer who is going to be successful and be able to carry out their career, it's rare to find, right? You want type A personalities that come in the door. We all have anxiety disorders. You hype us up, you train us, you throw us on the street, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is people in law enforcement, and I'll say it's at the Fed level all the way down to the local yokel level, is people get elevated to management positions that never should be there. And that's reason either they, a myriad of reasons. You have people in positions of power that shouldn't be there. And the third thing is lack of trust. There's a lack of trust between the police officers and the public, and between the public and the police officers. The people are supposed to trust law enforcement to do the right thing and protect them. And the officers don't trust the people because they, everybody's up to something, right? And if we had a way to elevate the right people in the position of powers that should be there, we were able to bridge that gap of trust between the public and the officers and bring in the right people who have the right disposition, who can be successful at the job, we'd make some headway. But we can't do that.
So you're right. And in 2024, the prosecutors and sheriffs are up for election. And good people can be placed in there.
Well,
and we're going to have just one thing, Adam. We're going to have a guest on here. We'll get deeper into who she is, introduce her, all that kind of stuff. But it's going to be a candidate for Washtenaw County Sheriff for 2024. And I think that is what you mean. We need people like her when we have this discussion in those positions, and that would help affect change also.
Speaking of that, that's also something that's coming to the rally. See, I can just kind of throw them in here when you guys line me up for it. Thanks.
Good.
We have invited many people that are running for candidacy to this event. So there are going to be people who are in their primary right now, stopping in, be able to come out and meet some of the speakers and be able to go to some of the tables. The tables that we have are going to be educational. We think right now, looking at it, I think we have about 25. There are going to be workshops there. There are going to be all kinds of different things for you to experience right there, people to talk to face to face. But that's another one of those situations too that we're going to be able to speak about too.
For
And if
sure.
you find me, I'll be smoking a joint. So make sure you find me at that rally.
Oh, I'll know you.
One of the best things to do at those events is to have a bunch of poster board and markers and allow people to make their own signs. You know, when they craft something like that with their own hands, they'll take it home with them and preserve
Yep.
it. And then the next time they come to a protest, they'll bring that sign too.
Well,
When we
that's
were-
the thing, Rick. This isn't a protest. That's what we're trying to tell people at this point.
Yeah,
It's just a rally. It's just an educational rally.
Doesn't matter. That's semantics.
right.
The point is a
Sure,
gathering
sure,
of
I know.
people where people are going to be bringing signs, you know, regardless
Well,
of the title of
Sure,
it.
sure. No, I
And
just
in
wanted
part,
to-
there is some protest that takes place a little bit, you know, in
whatever.
opposing these
right?
stupid bills that might be coming through in lame duck, and also for pictures, people holding up signs with a message. Doesn't
Yeah,
you know,
there-
no matter what the
Positive
context,
messages,
that's the thing.
There
you know.
will definitely be protests at your rally. I can
That's
guarantee.
fine.
It's
I
a
can
component
guarantee
of it.
that.
Although she's saying it's not the overriding.
It's-
Right,
Right.
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
A rally
yeah,
is different in function than a protest is, and a rally is more of a coming together. You typically don't have 25 tables at a protest, but you do have 25 tables at a rally. Sure.
Well, we passed on lobby day. It was that day actually happened to be Addiction Awareness Month. And there was a organization out there with multiple nonprofit organizations that worked on harm reduction, rehabilitation. There were just different types of rehabilitation programs like music therapy and light therapy and EDM stuff like that.
Oop,
You
you're
muted.
muted.
Pause while you're- or-
Yeah, I had to tell my kid to keep it down for a minute. Sorry.
Okay.
But anyway, it was quite amazing. They got a big tent out there. They had different tables with different educators there with information. You were able to, collect their information and learn a lot about their organizations. And they had speakers. They had chairs sitting out for everybody to sit. It was a really nice environment, and people were really there to learn about things. And it's kind of, the experience that we're looking for to happen. Of course, we know that things can never be the way they're supposed to be, so everything's anticipated. But the fact is that we want to be able to provide an experience where people can learn from each other, especially from different spectrums in this cannabis community, and it just start to tighten it up a little bit. There's so much division, and I understand why there's so much division. But if we don't start teaching these young people that are moving forward in the next phase of this arena, the only thing they're going to know is, going up and picking a couple pre-rolls from a dispensary, and that's
Well,
it.
the
alcohol
information's
is not
needed,
medicine. Go ahead.
not just for the young people, the
Right.
lawmakers and a lot of people in decision-making capacity that, haven't had benefit of having to discuss these things. And,
Right.
it's tricky because we've said it many times, even well-intended, even in support, they might not have the right information, and that obligation, extends.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Adam. I'm sorry.
It's all about misinformation. It's been about misinformation for 100 years, and we're not gonna overcome that in 10 or 12 years. It just doesn't happen that way.
No,
And
that's what I'm saying. Teach them now while they're young and out there and have this experience. And it's going to be something that, protests, we're going to have those. They're going to happen no matter what, because that's how we fight. But if we keep on fighting without taking a breath over here to start actually bringing people to the table and speaking to them about pediatrics patients, about the labor issues that could happen, that are happening now, that could happen in the future, and how to understand and manage those things and what to watch out for. Expungements, getting people involved with expungements, of either donating some of their time to help with paperwork, or going to an event, or even finding people to donate to the charities that, the organizations and charities that are collecting funds to help with that. All these things are available. You can see their logo online. You can quick see something in your digital spaces, but the attention isn't there as much as it could be. And it's up to us, I feel like, in this day and age, the older, the newer, the bigger, the better, whatever, to start creating a platform where people feel safe to get information, And the people who are passing it on to them feel respected for doing it because of the time and energy they put into it. So it's definitely going to create a community experience, which I feel like is necessary to keep moving forward and innovating and having the best state in the United States in the cannabis industry.
Done a lot of hard work on this, Latricia. I thank you. I know we talk offline all the time, right? Like you've been instrumental with the whole veteran grant thing going on, and there's been just so much support from everybody on the panel here.
And you really try to get proper context on these issues too.
Yes.
Not everybody does that, and that's appreciated. I'll go back to what Red Setter said a little bit before, and the shout out by the ambassadorships that you discussed for the event, which is like, you're asking for support. And that's the
Red Setter Farms is one of our ambassadors.
Yeah.
Cabbage.
As is the Bros Grow show, I believe, too, right?
Yeah.
Which is the show that he is also,
the FOB is there.
Yep.
Hero Project, you name it.
Well, the list seems to be pretty extensive. I've seen some of the more recent graphics. There's a lot of columns.
Yeah, you should publish a list. I mean, that would be an encouragement to other people who are not on that list to say, holy shit, look at all these guys. I better get on that list.
And every night I've been as we get new logos in, I've been putting them on a new sheet, but I do need to write them down for sure, because I need to get everybody's hashtags and all that other good stuff and do different promotional things and whatnot. So definitely is along the way.
Just to publish the list itself.
It's 4:20 Central Time.
Yes, 4:20 Central Time, 5:20 Eastern.
It's still a good time to light one up.
Oh yeah,
if you got it.
Yep, fantastic.
In fact, it's a perfect time. Now is usually the best time.
Yeah. So Anton and I are part of the Consumer Connection. We work with the state of Michigan and the Cannabis Regulatory Agency directly. And yesterday, we had our very first meeting as a Consumer Connection with the new interim director for the CRA, Brian Hanna. And Anton, he's somebody who's been at the CRA prior. He was at the Marijuana Regulatory Agency for a number of years, did enforcement actions. He left. He described his activity when he went back to the state police as he was working with the Internet Crimes Unit, hunting child pedophiles online, which is certainly an excellent way to be. We know that we need those people. And then came back to the Cannabis Regulatory Agency. Anton, would you like to share your thoughts about the meeting from yesterday?
Rick, what was the first question I asked him?
I don't remember.
What was your military specialty? That's how, it's interesting to see a veteran who
military intelligence. He responded.
He was a military intel guy. My initial impressions, I mean, I liked his energy. He did have a lot of energy, right? He seemed kind of pumped up about the whole thing. He seemed enthused to meet with us. I feel like he did mention that enforcement is a priority, which I don't think a lot of people would potentially.
I wrote that on my notes also.
Right, as long as
was the usage of enforcement then given necessarily?
Yes, I made him qualify, and he gave all the right answers. He said he's not interested in going in people's backyards. Right. That's the Michigan State Police and local police's options. He said of their enforcement actions on licensees,
keeping the regulations
on. That's the only place. So he had all the right answers for those things.
Yeah, I had a good vibe of it. I brought up, we got to my turn. I brought up the whole veteran grant thing. The one thing I took out of that conversation that I really liked and I appreciated that he did is that he also admitted that he suffers from post-traumatic stress from the war. And I appreciate him making that connection. And he reiterated his support for veterans' access and the use of medical cannabis and patients and caregivers in general. And I feel like, he is a bureaucrat at this point, but he made that connection, right? And I thought that was important. I did bring up the veteran grant issue, and I did, I'm at Rick, right? I mentioned that, hey, look, guys, we're running out of time. We do not want to ram an injunction up your ass. That's the last thing we want to do. But if we got to do it, that's what we're going to do. And I think that's, it's not to be a threat. It's not to be anything other than, hey, look, what's the bottom line here? The bottom line is we just want to make sure everybody's in compliance with the law. That's all we're trying to get at, right?
And an injunction sometimes is the way, and there's no hard feelings.
Yes.
They're
No hard
bureaucratically,
feelings,
They
right?
made a determination.
It's the
and they're not
process.
going to get off that until they're pushed off it, and that's the way to push them off of it.
If this
But,
is your position, we have stated our position, and if you don't agree with that position, well, then naturally, then the courts take over.
Here's
right?
the process that
that's the
decides it for
process.
us, right?
No,
Yeah.
there's no hard feelings, but
That's how citizens
process
redress
you
their grievances
set
with
up.
government.
yeah, that's and I thought he
It
was
would be
receptive
nice,
to
though,
it.
wouldn't it, if they said, "Hey, there are some things that have come to light," and there was a little glimpse of that in one of the meetings. If you
There
remember, like,
was,
and
yeah.
if hey, we should readdress this because there might be some things that went down the wrong path. I mean,
They've
that seems to
been
be
receptive.
legitimate too.
But
But
here's
nobody's
my
got
question.
taken it that far. We're going to have these conversations. We understand, blah blah blah. But nobody's actually said freeze. Let's
Yes.
readdress this.
And-
That's what's being looked for.
And I feel like, progress, Jamie, and I'll put it out this way. We heard that U of M has been the issue being, I'll back up, is U of M was proposed a randomized controlled trial utilizing CBD in veterans. And we need CBD like we need a fucking hole in our head, right? We don't need that. We're studying the efficacy of marijuana, which is what the MRTMA spelled out. And U of M, in an attempt to skirt around the process with the FDA, said we're going to use hemp, industrialized hemp, to extract our CBD, and that was what they were going to use. And I brought
Which is
up
contradictory, of course.
it's
to
contradictory to the
concept of
law.
an FDA-approved
And right,
study.
and you were in the meeting, Jamie. I had to press the guy. He was being evasive on the questioning. Where
It's
is your
cannabis
study
sativa L.
Cannabis sativa, he tells me. Where is
Yeah.
your fucking study drug coming from? Oh, cannabis sativa. And then I had to, is this 0.3% THC? It's hemp, right?
That guy
Bottom
does
line.
some good work, though, and I'm not
And
mocking
I'm not
him,
I'm not bashing him. I'm not
Yeah,
bashing
yeah.
him, but that's what went down, right? But my question was, the law says marijuana, and it appears that U of M has been advised you must use marijuana, which completely changes everything they submitted to the CRA.
That pushes them into having to get the FDA approval.
That's a big. So if we made that leap, we are making progress. And that was just by having a conversation. It was having the advocacy network and the I don't say intestinal fortitude, if you will, of digging into this issue and presenting this information. And at the end of the day, we are hopefully without the courts, to come into compliance. Everybody comes into compliance with the law. The regulators did their job. The universities did their job. The advocates did ours, and we're happy, and veterans are being helped. That's the issue at the end of the day. If that's going to happen is yet to remain to be seen, but I have been told we are working on it. And I said, well, work on it as quickly as possible because we are running out of time. And I feel like I'm being heard. I'm hoping that we make the progress we need because we're talking $40 million here of the taxpayers' money.
And
So
let me
we'll
just clarify a couple things too to tag on for people so they know. One is, if it's not this FDA approved study, it's not good enough. And if the study does conclude or demonstrate that this could be helpful for veterans with PTSD and help prevent suicides, then it needs to be of that standard, of the highest standard, in order for the VA to make any kind of policy change and make cannabis, accessible to people.
It's a tough
Human
process.
trials,
Here's-
controlled human trials with THC products are what we're looking for.
That's why it's important. These other studies could be okay, and they're worthy and all that kind of stuff,
Sure.
but they don't meet
Standard.
this standard.
This pot of
that's
money.
necessary.
This
Right.
pot of money is very specific. That's it. If you guys want to
Yeah.
conduct the research, and hey, I'm all about researching and veterans, all that, but this pot of money was for something extremely specific, and we need to make sure we're working within those concepts.
So,
Right.
Dr.
And the other
Sister
thing
made-
is the federal government is trying to expand upon available cannabis. That's for these studies. That's becoming more and more of an issue.
Yeah.
That since it has to go through this process, that they need more stuff to be able to offer for these
The
things.
fact is, it's tough to come into compliance. Too bad. Compliance.
bad.
And,
That's
and,
too bad.
and so now the next thing is I just wanted to point
So-
out one of the recipients maps and different maps than what we were talking about before. This is something
Association of Psychedelic Studies. Yes.
Yep.
yeah. Has a kind of a system in place that's a good model for how this was intended to be, and that means they've gotten their grant money, they have a spreadsheet, and they have used about 4% of their grant money in order to set up an infrastructure with which to begin the negotiation and in conversation with the FDA about getting all the necessary approvals. It's something that they have to go back and forth on, and everybody has to feel comfortable with it, and they're working on it, and they're demonstrating that's what you do, and then they'll use the money for those types of trials, and that's
God, they make it so difficult.
MAPS is doing it properly.
there is a model there that the other places can look at. And one thing, I don't want to harp on anybody because we're hoping kind of that that it comes together and we figure this out.
Yeah.
But there's $3.5 million that's not exactly accounted for in the way that I think those who are wondering where it went would like to see.
We want to see, and that was
part of
one
that,
of
yeah.
I'll just reiterate everything. So what are we trying to get out of this? We're trying to freeze the money so we can sort this out. We're trying to allow the CRA to reevaluate the study designs to make sure they're in compliance with the law. We're trying to make sure that maybe CRA liaisons or consults with the FDA, so we know that the study designs that have been approved would get FDA approval. We're trying to get a work group put together so we have some sort of oversight on this process, academics, veterans, and whatnot. And the last thing is we need monthly reporting. We need these reports submitted. We need to know where the money was spent. We need that information to be put on the website so any citizen who voted for this law can hop on there and they've heard us. They've heard us. It's not like they're blowing us off. I do think they did not anticipate this in any way, shape, or form to the level of. And here's the thing too. And I'm not playing all my cards. If they don't, if this isn't addressed, we can scale this up into disaster mode if we have to, or we can do the kumbaya thing. Everybody's happy. So really, I'm allowing them to pick the path that we're going down. Rick, I think I maintained decorum, right? With the way I had kind of, hey, we don't want to do an injunction, but it's a potential possibility here. And I think they know that at this point, right?
Yeah, the injunction word was mentioned one time, and I think it was of course in the natural flow of conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It was not in a confrontational absolutism kind of a delivery, which is important too, because there are some advocates that simply, when speaking to power, they can't help but speak in absolutes, as if in order for them to feel powerful, they have to have a threat mode going on. But when we've been doing this long enough, Anton, we've been months and months, we've been doing this with the Cannabis Regulatory Agency, and there's a comfort level. So there doesn't need to be any posing or posturing.
Correct.
There doesn't need to be any chest bumping in order to make your point. And that's an important, that free flow of conversation means there aren't casual things.
Credibility is important. Like for me, and I've told this when I talk to Sarah, like, look, guys, I don't want to lose credibility because I look like the fucking hothead dude coming out making. That's not the point. This is the process. This is how we're trying to solve it. And this is just it naturally playing out. And
and it's okay for you to sometimes tap into an emotional response based on all the circumstances that you're considering.
Of course,
do this. You're driven by.
But
this is passion. I'm driven by passion. I want my veteran brothers and sisters to be taken care of. And hey, look, CRA has acknowledged that. Those guys they always take my calls. They always speak to me. Rick, you've been on a lot of these calls as well. I want to be known as the diplomat here. I want to bring our legislators together. I want to bring our regulators, our advocates, and bring us and have this conversation, because you know what? There's going to be another veteran grant issue, just some other shit that's going to pop up, right? So if we can come together as a community now and solve this issue in an amicable way and present our case and hash this out, what is that going to look like when the next issue pops up? That's the vision that you talked about, Latricia. Like, we're working towards a system of working things out, because it's a horrendously complicated system with a lot of different personalities and a lot of powerful people who don't want to give up that power, and they don't want to admit that they're wrong. So when we get to a level to where we can have these conversations with these people, I think we're making progress, folks. I no matter what happens, I think we've made progress.
Go ahead, Adam. I know you're waiting.
Yeah. I appreciate you guys talking to this new interim guy, and I understand Anton asks questions that are somewhat federally related, and this guy kind of gets it because he was part of that. My question is, when are they going to do something to allow the people of the state of Michigan to use marijuana? Because right now they got a nice list of employees that are banned from using marijuana.
That's the legislature. You can't
That's-
do that through the Cannabis Regulatory Agency. Adam, we
And-
know this.
Well,
I mean,
well, you can, because they can request. If the director of the CRA went to the legislator and asked for a piece of legislation that corrected that, I believe he would get it.
There's a challenge for medical marijuana, I think, for sure. But
I believe
just to be able to use marijuana,
yeah.
that could be a requirement to work.
that would
with
have to
you
come
don't-
from the governor's office.
don't do
not
that?
the CRA.
Here, you know,
Well,
I'll say this.
but
I'm actually
Mike
trying to find the
Britton-
email. I'm sorry, Adam. The AG, Attorney General Nessel, actually in an email not too long ago addressed this exact same issue, Adam. And the question was asked, so why can't employees? We need to work on this. And I'll try and bring the email up. But the general gist of what she had gotten at is actually this is a federal issue, that they would lose federal funding
That's
if they allowed.
bullshit.
But I mean,
can't believe that the AG is using a federal funding
That's
excuse
bullshit.
to deny
Now-
progress on the cannabis
Now I got
issue.
2 things
I'll try and
to
find the
play
email
for
while you guys
when
are
we
talking.
meet.
That just sucks.
They're going to take away federal. That's like saying that if you misspeak, your mother's going to wash your mouth out with soap. You're an
Well,
adult.
no,
Your
it's
mother's not
it's
coming
much
to you.
different than that.
Hey,
You know,
Trish.
losing federal
The
funding
federal
could
government-
completely destroy
there's-
things. However,
there's
there's no
one
real evidence that
example.
would happen.
Yeah,
There's
can you?
one
That's that's a
example
bullshit,
of
old school
threatening
fucking.
that.
Yeah.
So,
They've been
hey,
trying that
Trish,
shit
can
for a
you
long time.
confirm that Cannapalooza Worldwide is in fact, sponsoring this rally? Because I can see John just kind of saying that and trying to get a little attention with
That's
that.
why I was smiling, because he really worked hard. We all did really try to get these funds collected and things like that for the sponsorships. And yes, definitely is true. We have Karina Miller with Lisa.
Oh,
We
cool.
have the Bloom Room, which is a grow shop here in Davison. We have, oh my gosh, I'm a jerk for not knowing this off the top of my head, but Cloud is also another one. Hold on, guys. Let me look this up real quick here. I'm a tired girl, so bear with me. I apologize.
We like when people are able to, just say exactly what they mean without having to
Yeah.
stop with any
Okay,
interruptions
here we go.
around here.
I got it. Well, I've talked to probably about in like maybe 9 or 10 business owners already today, and like have a hell of a lot of things to look at here. We have the original OG Joe, the original 420 Joe, Naki Aquio, Lisa Bloomroom, Cannapalooza, and probably about 3 others that are on their way right now with their payment and their logo.
Very cool.
I'm not
These
saying
are
that.
like the sponsors that are helping to support the costs and things like that.
100%. And it's just basically the donations that we're collecting are for t-shirts, so that way people can walk away with something. We also want to be able to get donations to see if we can get a tent, and we want to be able to get this tent because we know it's going to be in October, and October is unpredictable. But we also just want to be able to have a place where veterans and patients and people with disabilities that typically wouldn't be coming out there because they'd have to carry so much stuff with them, to be able to have a comfortable spot to sit. So we want to be able to bring up food there, you name it. So that's what we're doing right now.
What's that ambassadorship cost? You mentioned a fee.
Nothing. It doesn't
No,
cost
that's
anything.
just for support. That's kind of one of the things that Red Sutter was kind of pointing out. He thought it was really cool that was just the agreement. We just
Right, but
supported.
you just mentioned a check.
Oh, sponsorship.
Sponsorship. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I
we
used
do
the
have
wrong
sponsorships. I think we have 2 left. We have 2 more left. I cannot believe how fast those filled up already in 2 days. So we do have 2 more sponsorships left. We have one for $250, one for $500. Just the person who contributes the $500 is just going to get a bigger logo at the top than the ones that are paying the $250 for. And then, like I said, donations for tables. Just like I said, try to do whatever we can do to make sure that we take care of people that are there and make them feel welcome and comfortable and want to come back and learn something.
That's one of the things people have mentioned about previous rallies, protests, or gatherings on the steps of the Capitol. The Capitol doesn't provide anything, no chairs or anything at all. So if you want places for people to sit, you should bring them. Shelly Smith joins us.
She joins us. She says that she can just hear. I think
No,
that's weird.
I was
There you
gonna
go.
just listen in because I'm like, oh God, I didn't realize how late I was. I kind of just wanted to get some news, and then here I am now. So
So
hi.
it's nice. It's nice to have both Shelly and Trish here at the same time.
Yeah,
This is
I
this is
actually
good.
wanted to hear more about that, but I'll go look it up.
Well, we'll talk to you in a minute, but we'll hear more about this.
Okay.
But thanks for joining us.
So Trish, it looks like you're muted, by the way.
You're still muted.
Hey, there we go. Learning every day.
Yeah, but you mentioned food carts, and that always gets my attention.
Yeah, so in the very front of the Capitol, we do have some displays that are going to be there. That's a surprise, but one way or another, pretty much the whole front of the Capitol will have something there that represents the cannabis community. So I'm pretty excited about that. Then on the both right and left hand side, there are spots for food trucks. We have 2. We need 2 more. So we'll have 2 on both sides, and of course, anybody else that wants to come and then they're welcome to do so too. They just have to call Lansing and set up the parking permit and make sure that they obviously are licensed through the state, because we don't want any of that. Maybe
Right.
I don't know, but we'll see.
And sometimes
Yeah,
they send down the
that's-
county health
that'd be
inspector to make sure
sushi.
it's all set
Right.
up properly too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sure it grows.
Yeah, we have food, food trucks and stuff like that. They go through their inspections. They just got to make sure that they pay for their parking spot, because it's a hefty fine, and they want to make sure that they have a lot of food. Because
Well, Lansing is full of food trucks. If any Lansing food truck people are listening, I'm sure, especially in a midweek event. What day of the week are we doing, Latricia?
Tuesday.
on Tuesday.
It's a
Yep,
Tuesday.
that was,
And
We
just by the way,
wanted to-
the oh, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Trish.
we just wanted to make sure that we were able to get this at a time when legislators are still in office.
And
So-
likewise, decriminalized natures going the following Tuesday and catching some
Yeah.
people in session and trying to re-energize that some of the aspects of that movement as well. So I just want to throw that in while we're talking about it. And we will talk about that more, of course, next week probably. But Trish,
She's gone.
Dissolve.
That was it.
poof.
She'll be back.
I've got nothing more to say. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, she took a and
This is the Michigan Weedsters rally, right?
Yep.
yes, it
Yep.
is.
Okay, that's what I thought.
And then the next week is the decriminalized nature. And here's Trish coming back.
Okay.
Told you she'd be
Hi,
back.
She's
sorry,
back.
that was my fault.
It's okay. So Trish, what time does it start?
It is from noon to 5.
High
But
noon.
if you're a vendor and if you are a speaker, then we have to be there just a little bit earlier. If you're speaking at the end of the rally or whatever, then of course you don't have to be right there in the morning. But
So Rick needs to be there about 6:30.
Actually, hopefully the beginning.
whenever
of the
Rick wants to be there, we'll make space for him, and he can. That's kind of what it's going to be for everybody. We're going to kind of have to make some adjustments here and there when we have, because we do have some senators speaking, and we do have some candidates that are going to be coming out and speaking to as well. And you guys all know this. I learned this at Hash Bash. That when a candidate comes and they're scheduled, they're going to have to speak. So that's kind of what it is.
Break what you're doing and let them in. Yes.
Right. Give them the respect they deserve.
We have a long history of successful rallies at the Capitol building. I'm excited about what we're doing coming up on the 11th. It seems like something that this could be an opportunity to rally groups together. I hope that's how it goes on.
Yeah.
You mentioned a lot of surprises.
Bring some allies.
Forum
Allies.
for a reminder of these important issues that we've been talking about. But go ahead. Rick's asking you about the some of the other.
Oh
aspects
no, I'm
of
not
this.
asking because I like surprises too. But you mentioned
Oh,
several
okay.
surprises, like going to have stuff on each corner and surprise speakers. There's a lot
There's
of
a lot
fun
of creative
mystery
people in the
about
cannabis space. There's a lot of creative people in this community that just need to be able to shine. And this is going to be a beautiful event. There's just going to be lots of creativity and good conversation. And I'm really excited about it to finally go to I wouldn't say finally, but to experience something like this outside of the normal nature that we're used to, where people can actually come together.
Ryan was on Medical Mondays last night talking about the event. He's saying the setup for vendors is at 9. So Rick will be there at 6:30. He'll be standing. There'll be camera on him.
Sad Rick.
Brian.
And then the whole event will just be built around him. And then there'll be a podium put in front of him, and then he'll kick everything off right at high noon.
Mm-hmm.
Looking forward to it. I can't wait. It'll be a good time.
The issue of the veteran funding, the Michigan State Police blood testing, the big money interest, not screwing around during lame duck. That
150 people getting fired at once.
Yeah, there's so many. Lots of issues that we're dealing with, and
we're going to be the example. At the end of the day, I'll say this: I hope we are the example for the rest of the country.
Yeah.
I mean, the end of the day, volcanoes are there for a reason. That's how the world was built, right? Off of volatility. And if we can take that volatility and turn it into positivity, I think we're going to be, an example as we move towards federal legalization that others can look towards. And that's what I hope out of this whole thing.
That'd be great. I'm excited. I'm excited that you're all going to be there.
We have an event coming up tomorrow night in Collin. Jamie and I are going to be
hosting a township outside of Bay City, not too far. Yep.
Jamie and I will be hosting a town hall. They're talking about an upcoming ballot proposal that would allow an expansion from medical cannabis to adult use cannabis businesses there. That begins at 7 p.m. at the Township Hall. It's been advertised on or written about rather by MLive, and the Associated Press carried our press release. And
Rick, is it going to be live at all?
I don't believe
not planned, but I was kind of thinking about it. But we'll ask the people who are actually putting it on. It's not like we were asked to come in and facilitate it and answer questions, and I believe we're going to be joined by somebody who was the chair of the planning committee in Augrey for like 20 years and has done a lot of consulting thereafter, and a guy who I've worked with a little bit too, Tom Reif. And I can't think of his name, but he's the supervisor for Bangor Township. He's a guy that started off as a skeptic and now is very positive about the benefits of having these businesses and not seeing the issues that were discussed. And then there might be a chief of police from Vassar possibly there too, all important local officials discussing how the activity has unfolded in their communities and helping to support the idea of opting in. So it'll be interesting, but I think it'll be positive for those who have questions and want to feel more comfortable about this, that haven't really gotten into to investigating the issue as much.
Jamie, it was funny. To go back to the Consumer Connection meeting, Rick, when we're talking about opting in, Mitzi brought up a great point yesterday that, a major social equity barrier that we're running into is the lack of townships opting into the communities that have been affected by this whole thing. And so we talk about, opting in, there's this greater portion of things that when we talk about social equity and educating these townships to opt in and why it can help their community, I think the conversation is gaining traction, and that's it sounds like what y'all will be doing. I don't know. It's not enough traction, but I guess it's the best we can do, right?
Yeah. Yep. Reality is that there's no state nowadays that conducts their activities in isolation. The things that happen in Pennsylvania affect us here in Michigan. The example that we set in Michigan is followed by other states, including like our 12 plant allowance and our 2.5 ounces and the things that we let people do.
Just said that.
Yeah, Christian just said South Dakota's paying attention. None of us are isolated nowadays. So we all have a vested interest in making sure that the stupidity of certain programs like in Ohio or in Illinois or perhaps the limitations that Florida's seeing, that we don't repeat those and that we set an example that works, man. And the fact is, Adam said it best, and we've said it almost every single episode, the black market will never go away. And in order for the regulated market, in order to adjust themselves to the concept of co-equal existence within society, they have to come to this understanding. Instead of trying to pursue something that's useless, you can't keep chasing a ghost, right? The fact is you have to become more lean and mean as a company in order to be able to survive. and that's true. But the unregulated marketplace is always going to be there. Shelley, go
So
ahead. You were gonna go.
that's just real quick, Rick. That's just part of the lacking historical perspective. I mean, this,
Yep.
if you kind of like understand what's going on, you wouldn't, come in concerned about that as much. Go ahead, Shelley.
Yeah. Oh, nothing. I would just love for everybody to get on board with there just being a black market in everything. There's a black market in everything, and we all just need to relax. Not everybody wants to be like a millionaire multi-state operator, and they're not doing any harm, and like deal with it, I guess. Capitalism but I wanted to say we did the drawing for Reads and Weeds. I don't know if Julie came on here, but we did the drawing on Sunday, and we gave away 3 libraries, 3 sets of books, and then 2 individual books. I've already delivered them all. I've already gotten them all out into the world. We did a live video on Sunday, and we also gave away 3 gift bags with all kinds of crazy stuff in it, and 2 t-shirts, IntheoFest t-shirts with spore syringes, like 5 spore syringes rolled up in it. And John Slicker won something. So John, if you haven't called Julie back or responded to our video, it was really fun yesterday. I drove to, like if people were within driving distance, I went and dropped off their books at their house. And this one guy was so excited because he moved here from, I think he lived in Norway, and then he lived in New York, and then he married somebody. He ended up in Ann Arbor, and then the pandemic started, and he was stuck here. And he was like, I feel so lucky that I ended up getting stuck somewhere where psychedelics and cannabis are easy to find. He's like, it's the one thing about suddenly being like deep in a capitalist country during a pandemic. It's like, thank God. So he was so excited, and he was so excited to just start finding his people. I said, oh, you just got to find your people, and he's like, that's what I was doing at IntheoFest, is I was looking for my people. And so I was so happy he was one of the winners, because he was, one of the things we were talking about was like decriminalization versus legalization and marketing. And, like having something is different than selling and owning and all of that. And
There's a lot of parallels to the immersion of this whole,
so many parallels.
thing,
And
yeah.
also he has such a different viewpoint because he feels, hi, John, you won a prize. Make sure
He
to go.
loved your booth. He loved your booth at
Thank
EntheoFest.
you. I did too. But he was just talking about how, we live in capitalism, but he was just saying, like, if you're not from here and suddenly you move here, it feels like it's saturated in every nook and cranny, in every.
To go from 0 to Ann Arbor is a big switch, right?
from 0 to this stage of capitalism that we're in right now, where like everything you eat and drink and make and do and everything is like, there's money attached to
Corporatized.
it.
Yeah.
Corporatized. So it was refreshing, because I was like, oh, right, not every place in the world is like this, which is a hopeful thought,
Right. In some cases.
Yeah. So congrats to all the people that won things. If you haven't seen the video or heard from Julie, go check that out, because I've already given out all my stuff.
Yeah, it was cool. We did talk about it last week, a couple days after EntheoFest, but definitely was really cool. That's a thing that's starting to get underway, and it's already had its second one, and all things are go for a third, from what I understand. And
yes, I had an acupuncture appointment yesterday, and my doctor, I had on my EntheoFest t-shirt, and he was like, oh, tell me what that is. And I told him, and he goes, oh, I actually need some referrals. Like, I have many patients who are wanting to learn more and understand more about psychedelic assisted therapy. And so he needed he's like, who can I refer people to?
Sounds like a monthly meeting in Ann Arbor is required now.
Well, I know. And did you guys get that survey? Julie sent out that psychedelic survey. Yeah. And so it's very thorough and very well done. And and I guess I need to figure out if I can grab that and send that along to other people. Are they just using the emails that were submitted? I don't know. But I feel like more healthcare providers need to look at that survey, because it was good. And if
Right.
if you're listening and you went to InthioFest and you
Man, so that group, and one of the things I wanted to point out, they've just done such a great job of organizing, figuring out what they need to do,
Mhm.
getting it done,
Yeah.
being successful. It's just really cool to watch.
Julie's an awesome human being. We're honored to have her as part of the community. She's unbelievable.
Yeah, she's
Right
doing
on.
all good work all over the place.
And Jim Salam is
And
is
Jim
an
Salam.
MC and also as a
Michael
as a
File.
primary on that particular project.
Mhm.
Wonderful.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
I worked
He
with
was-
both of them on the itinerary for the festival, and they were very easy to work with and
Yes.
very kind. It was a good team to work with. I had a good time with that.
Yes.
Excellent.
I know we're running out of time here, so I just wanted to bring up one other thing that was a revelation that came out of our meeting, a cannabis consumer meeting, was that the Veritas Lab Scandal court cases. Obviously, the CRA has an enforcement action against Veritas. Veritas is countersuing the CRA. And administrative law judges decided to combine those two cases together. And the new hearing date to hear those is November 29th and November 30th. Now, that seems to me to be a very long time in a program that's already been a long time as we stand here. But that is the way that the slow wheels of justice go, I suppose. So
It's good to get some news. I mean, that we haven't had that kind of a development, other than we should be hearing something at some point.
well, I
it's
asked
still in
about it,
motion.
and they went and did all the research and came back with this 29th and 30th date. So it came directly from the CRA, so we know it's straight.
It could have been scheduled recently, officially. Now they're saying here's some more information. and-
Yeah, it clearly just happened because he had to go to
Right.
his email to check the dates on it. So it's not something that was already publicly available, and that's
really
important.
cool. Yeah,
It's important because we know that we have an ongoing investigation to protect, the integrity of the testing system, protect the people that are shopping, and make sure that certain companies are not cheating, and then forcing really good people out of business that just try to get into the industry and to make a life for themselves and for their families, and then got victimized by some giant corporate bigwig who decided to play around with the rules in order to create an advantage and force people out.
Skew Science for capital gain, who has a history of skewing science for other preconceived results they benefit from.
Shelley said boo, and I think that's the quote right there.
Yeah, I think that kind of fits.
Ooh, actually, boo, ooh.
Boo.
So speaking of Shelley, anything else you want to?
Sharmi Golson's doing a ghost tour in Ipsy October 29th.
That
And
sounds
it's
like
near my birthday. So you
would
guys
be
should come
fun.
do the ghost tour with Sharmi and me and a bunch of randos in Ipsy.
If I can, I absolutely will, because that sounds like
Jamie,
a lot
I'll
of
send
fun.
you the link. I'll send you the link, Jamie, right now.
That's
all for me.
There is a certain appeal to that whole scenario, kind of,
It's really
with
just
some cannabis and stuff on
it's
top.
just
maybe some
wandering
mushrooms.
around following Sharmi, listening to whatever she's talking about.
That works. Yeah,
That's fine with me. Even
Yeah,
if
of
there's no
course.
ghosts, we'll just do that.
that'll be excellent. Maybe we had Charmy on a few weeks ago too. All over the
Yes.
place.
Come do
So-
it.
Trish, anything you want to get in before we shut it down?
I think we got it pretty squared away. Just October 11th, Lansing State Capitol from noon to 5. Be there, be square.
Yeah, we're going to be
Nobody
there.
wants to be square. Damn.
And then we'll obviously probably be talking about it a lot on
Absolutely.
the show later on that day. The show will start before it's over, but we'll still
Mhm.
we'll report for those who couldn't make it, but who definitely wanted to be there, and definitely appreciate those who can make it showing up to fill in, because you can and some people can't, and they would like to be there and support.
Right. But hopefully, if we can make some way of making it happen, we're going to try to live stream the speakers, and if it's a possibility.
Yeah, I think it could work out.
Hmm.
It's been done.
Yep, you just no.
What were you saying, right?
A guy with a tripod and a source of power, so that his
Yeah.
camera can get powered for 5 hours. Because if you're talking about doing 5 hours of straight streaming, you're going to need a power source for that particular thing. So
Or just trading it out Like
Yeah.
one phone charged up, another powerful phone takes its place, but
Right.
stays
Mine
on
was burning up.
If you brought
And I
that
think
to
Ryan's
Facebook
going to
feed-
have his little mini tower there.
Ryan's
Yeah,
good.
for sure.
Ryan's been doing that.
And he's also going to have his ability to tap into internet.
So
Awesome.
hopefully we'll make that happen.
Adam, we
Yeah.
got anything in? Anything in before we?
No, I think it was a good show.
Yeah, it was a free for all today. We just talked
Bitches
about
and
whatever we
chains.
wanted to, and it worked out pretty good. And and you had a lot of contribution. Appreciate it. You haven't been on for a little bit, and I hope your recovery continues.
Yeah,
in a
it's
good direction.
getting better. But I'd just like to see some. I mean, I've said this before. I'd really like to see all these legislators and bureaucrats invited to a sesh, so they can see that we're not, rapists and murderers that they claim we are. This type of event certainly goes towards that. But I'm really big on that. I think they need to be exposed to marijuana. They're not. They're just regulating it, and the time will come.
Kind of impress upon them that they have an obligation to experience it more directly before they continue to make
I'd like the
policy
regulators to be able
decisions.
to do it too.
I'd like to see the Liquor Commission people be banned from using alcohol.
Let's see how good that works.
I
Concept, right?
mean, probably a good idea sometimes.
right?
Yeah, but I have a feeling those people really enjoy their boozies.
Yeah, and
Can't blame them.
I mean, I'm sure we could find enough of
Everybody's
us
got
to
the same.
babysit these people if we had to, if they were that concerned. But it just bothers me that the head of the show doesn't know, and that really bothers me. I mean, we wouldn't allow that anywhere else. We don't allow it.
I don't know. We let people be principals that have never been teachers, and we let people be school administrators that have never.
We do it all the
stepped in a
time.
classroom. So
Mhm.
Yeah,
we
but-
kind of do it. We appoint leaders that don't really have experience in the people they're leading all the
It's
time.
kind of our
actually.
jam.
Just lie on your resume. You
but
can be
they're
whatever you
A
want.
repeated
educators.
mistake.
Just kidding.
The point is, they're educators, and not one of those people that work for the CRA can come out and say, "Excuse me, boss, you're wrong."
Mhm. I don't
Well,
know.
it's not ideal, man. I mean, I would like for people to have. This is under the umbrella of they all need more information.
Yeah,
Why they have us.
Yeah.
That's where we come in. We'll tell them
That
they're wrong.
we gotta try to help out with that.
Working with the
Yeah.
government is how they get that information. Yep.
Mhm.
and I'm sure it only applies to government employees. I'm sure it does not apply to elected officials.
No, Dr. Nina Robb mentioning men being in charge of women's reproductive rights. Certainly, that is exactly another example of
Well,
people who
That-
don't
Going
have
through a
more
weird
research
time with
than
that,
the other.
that can
Supreme
change
Court
very
decision.
easily. Elect yourselves leaders of this country. Put the men out of business for a while, and then you take over. I'm all
Right.
for that.
Kind of did in Michigan, right?
Yeah.
Attorney general, governor.
Fine with me. Who's ever going
state,
to
all
step
female.
up and do the job? And I see a lot
I
more
mean,
energy and
think-
organization coming from a lot of those.
You know what I
groups,
haven't seen? I haven't seen some of the stupid scandals that we had with Rick Snyder. Rick Snyder's taxes or Rick Snyder's past business dealings and blah, blah, blah. There were a lot of things that tainted the Snyder administration over the 8 years, not including, the Flint water crisis. But the fact is, we haven't seen that with Whitmer.
Hey, so let's get Anton in for a second and wrap it up. We're going over, but I really have enjoyed this
Yeah,
this
nah.
conversation. Go ahead.
It's been a great conversation. I think we covered a lot of topics. I think the one thing I hope listeners take away is, a lot of the issues that we're raising, we're trying to solve them with peace, love, and diplomacy, right? We want to call each other a team at the end of the day. We want our elected officials to listen to the constituents and the constituents to educate the elected officials and so on. And I believe that a lot of the issues we discussed, we're going to be able to have a good story at the end of the day. And that's just a positive perspective I'm going to keep, whether that happens or
Yeah.
not.
See the silver lining everywhere you go.
Yes. Yep.
Well, there's
That's all
room
I
for
got.
it. That's for sure. Appreciate it. Rick, you want to wrap us up? A couple minutes over, but again, all good. Really appreciate everybody's participation today.
Yeah, no, I think it was a great show. Personally, coming up, Latricia will be on 420 Post tomorrow in the morning, and then I've got personal appearances on behalf of Redemption Cannabis Thursday, Friday, Saturday down south by the border itself. And again, Wednesday evening, we have that special town hall in Cawcolin. These type of events are going to be popping up between now and the election time. Just be educated on who you are voting for and what you are voting on, and make sure that you make that vote happen, whether it's through absentee or whether it's in person. Oftentimes people are disassociated with the election process, especially all the bullshit that's been attached to this one and to the previous one. But it's never been more important for you to get out. We have to have the right people in office. And right now is a more crucial time in our nation's history than ever before. And although we keep saying that every election, it's truer each election that passes. You have to participate. Please, if you're watching this, I know you care. Do what we ask. Just vote. Vote, vote, vote. I don't care who you vote for. I do care who you vote for. But vote. Just vote. Don't listen to me about who to vote for. Just vote. That's it. That's my message.
Right on. Appreciate it. Participate in the process. Have a voice. Thanks, everybody. Jazz Cabbage Cafe. Be back again next week. Appreciate it. See you guys.
Peace.
Peace.